Please join me in welcoming Dr. LaVoy and Elizabeth Garcia Hall.
Good morning.
Good morning. It is so weird hearing other people talk about you. So
I'll talk about her all day long.
we'll talk about each other. This is the most beautiful set I think that you and I have ever been on together.
I kind of feel like Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah, well, and you just saw Oprah.
I got to see Oprah Winfrey last week.
Oprah and Obama and a whole bunch of cool
This
people.
is super beautiful. We're both battling some junk, so we're bringing our deep bass voice. I call it my Elizabeth voice, and that's what my husband calls me. So we're double fisting some water. We've got some cough drops and a pocket full of Kleenex. So if anything, it kind of goes haywire in the middle. Have some patience with us.
How many of you went to the keynote speaker this morning? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So we didn't get a chance to go. We drove up from Madison together this morning. But did you get some good tips about how to treat your employees? Anybody want to share something they wrote down or an aha moment? I'm a teacher, let me rephrase that. Can one person please share something they wrote down? Yes, sir.
Sure. She gave some good quotes from Danny Meyer from New York, you know?
Yep.
And one of them was that not to be a swan when you're working in the restaurant business, especially because she gave this little picture on her screen with a swan floating in the water real gracefully.
Nice.
It said, yeah, the legs are going like this.
Yeah, what's under the surface, right? Yeah, beauty on top, chaos below. That's awesome. Yeah, we actually, we teach her Danny Meyer's book, Setting the Table, in our hospitality leadership class at Madison College. And I know Food Fight has done that before in reading and stuff too. What a cool way to partner, to go from that keynote speaker into talking about culture, which is really what we're going to do today. I think, do you need to say anything else about us with the introduction?
I'll jump in. Go ahead.
And hopefully my mouse works. We just have some slides to give pictures, but I'm looking at, like, those of you in the back probably won't know what this means. But if you can't see it, I'm happy to send it out afterwards. Our business cards for both of us are in the back, and feel free to contact us. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we're going to do for the next hour, we wanted to start by talking about what is culture. Because culture is one of those words that seems to be a buzzword, or that there's a million books about. And if I asked everybody to write down a definition of what culture is, certainly we would have 50 different definitions. But at the end of the day, our employees definitely know what they want when they think of culture. We're going to talk about why it matters. We're going to talk about who's responsible for it. We're going to give you some tips and tricks. And Food Fight Restaurant Group, how many of you have heard of Food Fight Restaurant Group or dined at a Food Fight Restaurant Group? Yeah, I'm a Food Fight Restaurant groupie, and part of it is because I know how they treat their employees. So Elizabeth has some really great tips and tricks to share. And then we thought if there was time, we might do some best practice sharing, because certainly with all of you in the room, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm going to assume you're doing some really cool things. Some of you may be newer to this, some of this might be old school, but maybe there's some time for some practice sharing. Cool. So we will start with what is culture. And when I think about culture, when we teach culture in the school at Madison College, we talk about it being as the temperature or the pulse. When we think about what is culture, it's how employees talk about you when you're not there. It's what they're saying or not saying when you walk away. So think about that employee. How many of you have employees that directly report to you? Just a quick show of hands. So some of us have employees that are back at our restaurants and our hospitality locations, and they're doing everything we know we wanted them to do. Maybe you left a laundry list of items that needed to get done while you were here learning, or maybe they just do it because they're go-getters. And then we have employees that we're not quite sure what they're doing right now, and we're a little worried we're going to get an email or something on social media later. And social media has changed the concept of culture, because if employees are not happy while it's happening, they can get their phones out and be video recording what is going on in the moment. Same if they are happy. Unfortunately, for most people, when we are upset about something, we sort of spit that out But when things are going really well, we don't talk about it quite as much. But employees care about culture. And I think later today there's generations in the workforce for restaurants, like a Gen Z, a concept on that one. I would highly suggest that you go to that one if you have time. I think what the new generations are looking for in terms of culture is a lot more than just how they feel at work, but it's what your work does. So I encourage you to go to that one. Culture is also, it's the pulse and the energy. So when I walk into a restaurant, I can feel, almost before I even walk in the door, if an employee likes their job or not. I can see if they make eye contact with me or if they sit at the stand doing this. I can feel if they're smiling and welcoming me, if they ask me how my day was. And I can feel and see if I'm a nuisance that's in the way of them getting off their shift on time. You've all had an experience where you walk in somewhere and you feel really welcome. You feel expected, you feel cared for. And then there's the culture where you walk in and you are just literally a number. I think when we talk about culture, we're not talking about a buzzword. It's not something that you can say you do and not actually follow up on it. And employees have really high BS meters. They know when you're saying something that you don't really mean, or when you're walking past them and you're like, hey, Jerry, how you doing today? Great, I'm so glad that you're here. But you don't actually stop and look at them. And they talk about it with each other, probably behind your back, maybe online. They might start a Facebook group called We Hate X Restaurant. Or, worst case scenario, your culture ends up in a restaurant, in a newspaper from somebody forwarding an email, which those of you in the Madison area, there was last year a lot of issue with a restaurant that had a big stumbling block because they didn't quite get it right. So culture matters, but it starts here, in your heart. Culture is not something that you can just tell someone to do. Culture is not something that you can just expect someone to be. And so there's some things that we can do to help cultivate that culture. And the generations that are coming into the workforce, Gen Z and whatever happens after that, whatever they end up calling that one, Gen X.1, I don't know. They are expecting to be treated with care and concern. They want to feel good about working for you. And although my expertise in the Madison demographics, or in restaurant demographics is Madison, I'm thinking it's throughout the state that if they don't like where they work for you, because they're a paid volunteer in essence, they can go right down the street or across the way and get a job like that and take your best customers with them. We like to say in Madison, we're kind of cannibalizing each other for top talent. So culture matters. It's really, really important. Want to add anything?
Yeah, I guess I would just say, speaking to the point of what your employees are looking for, it's that vibe and energy, and it's what you're living. So when we think, okay, if we're in management or if we're in ownership, we have it's like the swan, right? We have all this stuff going on underwater. We have a lot of stuff that we need to be taken care of. Do we really need to deal with Betsy's drama right now? Maybe we do, right? Because the culture that we have, if Betsy feels like she's safe, if she feels like, oh, you know what, there's someone listening to me, there's someone who can say, you know what, Betsy, I need you right here, right now with me. We're gonna get through this shift together, and then we're gonna talk for 5 minutes, and I'll give you that time. Then, you know what, the P&L, the financials, the ordering the liquor, you know what, that stuff is gonna happen. But you wanna keep Betsy. Drama queen or not. She brings something to your team, and you have to be able to give her that time. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's really easy to get caught up in all the other things we need to do, in the things that we need to do for the people that we report to, or the people that are invested in our business, where whoever is knocking on your door saying, I need X, Y, and Z, Betsy needs us too. So I think that when we take that time, to say hello and good morning and mean it, make some eye contact, to ask how people are doing. If we know that someone's dog was at the vet, to ask about that. Those are the little moments of investment that will create culture that you actually care. Can I swear? Okay.
Ask them.
Okay, I got a thumbs up
sure.
from the man in the
Sure,
black hat. The man in the
immediately.
black hat said go for it. So So give a damn, right? Because it is a BS meter. We have them too, right? So if you can actually put your heart out there and say, all right, Betsy, we got this. We're going to get through this shift. We'll talk afterwards. You might have to say the same thing to Betsy 4 shifts in a row. But she's worth it because she will go across the street. And she's going to learn and be as amazing as we help her to be. So that to me is what culture is too.
Absolutely. So how many of you are hiring right now? I teach a workforce advancement training grant at Madison College. We partnered with the state, and we're going to talk a little bit about this later with Elizabeth, like their entire team comes, it's amazing. But one of the questions I always ask is, who's hiring right now? And last time I asked that question, everyone but one hotel raised their hand. And I thought, maybe I wasn't clear, maybe because everybody's hiring right now. So I said, you guys aren't hiring? And the woman goes, no, it's the Hampton Inn Suites Madison downtown. We're fully staffed. Well, I can tell you, if you're ever in Madison, stop into the Hampton Inn Suites Madison downtown. It's on Bassett Street. It is magical, and it all stems from their leader. Culture matters because your employees are watching you, and they're talking about it. Culture is important because it depends on when someone wakes up in the morning and they say, I have a bit of a headache today, or I'm not sure I have enough money to put gas in my car, or whatever their reason is for wanting to stay in bed that day, that instead of them staying in bed that day, they choose to come to you. Culture is a choice for your employees as much as a choice for you. And what is sometimes scary to me is when leaders say, oh, our culture is phenomenal, we don't have any issues, and then they turn around and what happens behind them? It's the kick under the, right? The beautiful swan, but what's going on underneath can be pretty scary. And in restaurants where we have low pool talent to pull from, and where we have a need to provide memorable customer service experience where people feel like next time I go to Door County, I'm going there, and they talk about it. Culture cannot be like a 2-liter that you shake up and uncap and go, I went to a Wisconsin Restaurant Association, I learned all about making people happy and culture, and I'm gonna come in here and vomit it all over you. They know that's not right. It's small steps of you being your authentic self and caring for them so they can be their authentic self, so they can make the choice to come to work and to serve your customer in the way that you need them to. So that's what when we talk about why culture matters, that's why we wanted to come here. We think it's important, and we're appreciative that Wisconsin Restaurant Association is even putting this on the docket, starting from your keynote speaker, because for me, as a teacher, I can't convince a parent or an employee to come to the hospitality management program, because what they see on TV and how we're treating their most precious people in their life is not good. So we have to break that scenario. We have to break that paradigm so that people know that this is an incredible place to work. Being a server, being in the restaurants, being hospitalitarian, to steal from Danny Myers, is an incredible gift. And it teaches you transferable skills you can't always get everywhere else. But if we can't get people in the door because they think the minute they walk into you that we're looking like Gordon Ramsay or whatever thing they see on TV, they're gonna go to Target and Walmart, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we're trying to get people to see us as a viable option and a career path to greatness. So, who's responsible for it? Who's responsible for culture? You can raise your hand and point to who you think is responsible for culture. Yeah, thank you, it's us. We are responsible. It starts from the top down and it goes all the way back up. And it's everybody in between. It starts before they even come in the door. It's how are we hiring? What questions are we asking? And then how do we care for people when we're there? Do we just hire them, put them through a 2-week training session, kick them and say good luck? Or do we check in with them? Do we ask questions? Do we stay later than we were supposed to that day to make sure we check in with Bobby? Because we heard some rumors Bobby was thinking about going to the competitor. Anything else you want to add on that?
No.
Okay, I want to share two very cool stories. Keep me on target here. One is about Chef Rick Tremonto. Anybody know Chef Rick Tremonto from Chicago? He I'm not going to do all of his service justice, but he has The True in Chicago and some other ones. He has like 7 cookbooks. He's amazing. And Chef Rick Tremonto was at our Madison College last week doing the chef series. If you've not heard of it, Madison College brings in famous chefs from all over the place, and they come cook for us, so that's really cool. But then they get to answer questions with the students, and they get to talk about sort of their journey. Chef Rick is he's a big dude. He's like a bear. He's like tattooed up. It says like chef and believe or something. Like I had to sit at chef's table with them, and I was terrified. I could feel things like changing in my neck physiologically. I was sweating. I was like, I can't sit by this chef. He's so amazing. And he was just down to earth and super cool. And this is a very well-known guy in the Chicago area. He's cooked for the likes of Julia Child and Emeril Lagasse and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Cool dude. Intimidating. All the students were asking questions. I have a bunch of students sitting kind of behind me, and I can hear them talking, and I raised my hand. And I stood up and I asked a question, and my voice was cracking because for some reason I was really nervous. And I told him one of the things that I really appreciated about him was as he was cooking, he was story sharing about his last 40 years in industry. And he was saying how just a bunch of things about people he had met and learned, and he said it without ego. He wasn't saying, I am amazing. And he was just talking to the students, and he was being very intentional about talking about staying in college and not getting plucked out by the next executive chef that comes and not finishing their degree and all the things that you want to hear. But what I wanted to hear from him was what would his, whatever age he is, self, tell to his 20-year-old self, which was the average age of the student in the room at that time. And so I asked him, I said, what is something you would gift yourself if you could go back in time? And he started giving a very textbook cool answer about something. And I could see eyes glazing over. And he stopped himself. And here's this big tattooed dude, and he said, I would go back and tell myself to be kind, to stop being such a jerk. That when someone walks into my restaurant to say thank you for being here, and you know what, could you please hand me that whisk? Not give me the whisk, or look at them and inspect them to know. And we teach that in leadership. We teach them, you have to be kind. What you're seeing on television, that culture will not sustain people for very long. They will do it for a while to work with the Rick Tremontos and the Tori Millers of the world, if that's how they treat them, but they won't do it for very long. We have to be cautious of how we care for each other. We have to be kind. And it's not a story that we all can say that we've done our whole lives. And you can say that, well, some people need to be told what to do, and that's true. And at some point, we also have to let them stub their toe, but not break their foot. But if we're not cautious about the culture of how we care for each other, they will go elsewhere. And it's okay for us in leadership roles to say, I'm still a work in progress. I'm still doing this thing. I had a very big job with Great Wolf Resorts, if you've heard of them, the one in the Dells, but I actually oversaw the call center that had about 150 people, and I was maybe 25, 30 years old, somewhere in there. And I will never forget, we had a brand new beautiful call center, and they brought my office right out front, and the intention was that as people came in to work in the call center, that I would see them and could say hello, but the real work of the gist was happening in the back. 150 different call agents handling the revenue for this huge company. And I thought it was so cool being in this beautiful office, and I'd wave to people as they came in. I was like young and dumb, stupid. And there was this one guy, we're gonna call him Call Center Bob. Bob would walk in every day and I'd see him and he'd be late. Almost every shift, because you could tell when there was a shift change as people came in and out. And I would stare at him, and I'm just gonna be totally vulnerable with my unleader-like moment here. And I would look at him and I would think in my head, like, that Bob, he's doing this to me. He's doing this to the person, look at him. He's coolly walking past me like, what are you gonna do about it? I just went on and on and on. So I finally asked a supervisor, and she was like the in-between of us, and I said, what's going on with Bob? He's late every time, like, is he getting written up? Are we following our procedure? Our procedure manual tells us that they're fired after a certain number of times being written up. What's going on? And she said, you should bring him into your office and talk to him. I should have met him where he was at and asked him some questions, but I brought him in, and I sat in front of him and probably had some sort of power-hungry look on my face, and I said, I noticed you're late every single day, Bob. What's going on? And he starts crying. This is probably, I'm like 20-something, he's 50-something, and here's a grown man vulnerably crying in front of me, and I'm like, oh my God, there's nothing in my schooling that tells me what to do with this. What do I do? I'm like fumbling for a Kleenex. And he tells me that his wife of 30 years just left him, took the house, took the dog, took the kids, took the car. He's a veteran of the US, so he's living with another veteran buddy. And he has no way to get to work to make it on time because his veteran friend can't bring him, so he gets a ride to a bus stop, waits for half an hour or so, then takes a bus to work. And here's me saying, what is your problem, Bob? You can't get to work on time, Bob. Instead of asking him, what's going on in your life? Simple solution, we adapted his schedule until he could figure it out so he didn't lose his money too. So here's me in the culture of that organization thinking, you're not following the procedure. You're a jerk, and you're not good for our company. When in reality, turn the mirror around, I was the jerk. I was the one not being kind. And that is not how we should treat each other as human beings, particularly in this industry, where we care for our customers, but we forget to care for each other. So, I wanted to quick share those two stories. Thanks for letting me entertain that. There's some tricks, and the very first thing is to hire well. So when we think about hiring, what's your hiring practices? Where are you looking for talent? What kinds of questions are you asking? Are you hiring for someone and then saying, watching them and observing them and saying, you know what, James, you are so good at this. Have you ever thought about coming over here, working in front of the house? Or, hey, I noticed you have a camera on all the time. What's going on? Are you interested in photography? Can you help us with our social media? You know, we hire well because we look for the right talent. How many of you, just think in your mind, are out and about in your communities and you see someone that's really, really good at their job and you hand them a business card and say, come work for me? I know that's cannibalizing each other. Good for you.
I totally do that.
Look for those
totally
people.
do that.
Hire them on the spot. Elizabeth's husband, who is an award winner here this week, I adore him. His name is Jose. Jose will not allow people to leave without offering them a job. Like, why would I, if I think you're amazing, why would I let you leave and pass 4 more restaurants on the way to your home? I'm going to keep you here, and I'm going to hire well.
I mean, really what we have now, at least what we're experiencing within Food Fight and in the Madison area is that I'm going to set up 5 interviews. How many are showing up these days?
1.
2? 1 maybe, 1, right?
0.
Like, it's kind of like used cars, like don't let them off the lot. Mm-hmm. And the pool is really shallow. So it's, you know, I'm, just to be straight up about it, like if I'm going to set up 5 interviews, am I going to have 5 like superstars that are going to be lifers and that are going to knock it out of the park? I'm not. But I have to say, okay, they've got something to offer me, right? And I have something to offer them. So we're going to figure that out. If we're going to hire well, let's interview well. So interview with your culture in mind. I can say, where do you expect to be in 5 years?
5 months.
Not here,
They don't know
because
in
you
5
just
years
asked me
anymore.
that stupid question. I'm not doing it. No,
Right.
Like, let's be human in our interviews. Let's say, like, have you eaten here before? That's a good place to start. No, I haven't. Oh, let me just order us something that we can try while we're talking. Put in an order for a whatever, I don't know, wherever you are. And just bring a plate over, talk over it. Ask questions that may lead to their personality. You know, things that, I don't know, tell me about your boss at your last position.
Hobbies,
you know, like,
interests.
gosh, let's not set the interview up that it's supposed to be a trap, that they're going to say something wrong and we can like cross them off the list. We do not have that luxury right now.
All right, is it okay to ask why did you leave that last job?
I think it's okay to say, like, are you interested in telling me about that? You know,
Yeah.
they can not
It's not
answer
a-
it,
it's
and
not
they
an
can
illegal
feed they
question.
can feed you some malarkey, right? So if you think I'm actually going to get something from that, I mean, if I'm interviewing for a job and I left my last position because, I don't know, because I don't usually leave positions.
Maybe you.
What's the reason that we don't want them to leave their last position?
More money.
More money, yeah.
Quarter more an hour. That's all
They
it
paid me
takes.
terribly. I'm not going to probably say that in my next interview. I mean, ask questions that we're going to get answers to. Like, I don't know, What's your favorite animal if you go to the zoo? Who cares, right? But you're going to get a slice of them. They might say, I don't go to zoos because I really prefer to let animals roam free. Okay, fair enough. So if you're out in free animal roaming land, what do you love to watch?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? So then, then you can see, like, do they have any personality? Do they interact with you? Do they look you in the eye, or are they just practicing? Ask them something that they're not going to expect, maybe. When I interviewed for the position I have, I was interviewing with Monty Skiro, who's our president and founder, a real nutball if you've ever met him. Love him dearly. But, and then I walked in the room, I was nervous. There were 6 people in there, and Monty said, what is it your dad does again? My dad, like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, my dad, this isn't about my dad. But it totally, I got to talk about my dad for a second, and it made my nerves just absolutely go away. Next thing I knew, we were off and running on an interview, and he got to see a slice about how I feel about my family. So ask about the favorite animal. Ask, like, do you love a V-neck or a crew neck? I don't care, ask something goofy. But interview for personality. Because the other stuff we can figure out. You know, which POS do you love? Who cares? We can teach you the POS, you know?
It's super interesting because I get calls all the time at the technical college asking for people. They're like, I need an employee. Actually, I need 8. And I always ask them about their culture and about why do you need employees, you know, because we can teach, everybody says, we can teach you the technical stuff, and that's totally true. But who are you looking for? Who's going to complement your team? What's that personality trait that you need for your team? Because when you're hiring for them, you're not just hiring to give that person a job and fill a slot. If you want to keep them, you need them to have a friend at work or feel included at work, so they want to come back and be a part of something. So you kind of hire in terms of, how does this person fit our culture and not just the job? Because if it's true that you can teach them anything, and I'm sure you can, then hire that person because they complement your incredible A players that are already there. Because they bring something that maybe you're looking for.
Comments? I like to ask for comments.
Did you have one or two?
Yeah.
One then, lady then gent.
You know, a couple of years ago, I started basically making small talk with interviewees, like, how's your day going today?
Yeah.
And that leads into further conversation. I don't actually start my interviews probably for 5 minutes after I sit down and I talk to them. It kind of takes the edge off on them a little bit, and you see the reaction right away. You know, somebody starts talking about their kids, oh, your kids,
Yeah.
So it seems to work well for us.
That's awesome.
Because it's the culture that you're building from the moment they walk in the door at the interview. Right on.
And I think especially the people coming straight from the K through 12 system, they have career counselors now, and so they're ready for those behavioral-based comments or questions like, tell me about a time when you blah, blah, blah. They've been practicing that, but that doesn't really get to who they are and how they'll fit in. So you can balance it with some of those behavioral-based questions. Of course, you want to know how they handle rejection or conflict or whatever, but you also want to know fundamentally who they are as a person. So that's cool. You had a question as
I
well?
was just going to say, we usually ask them short-term versus long-term goals. You know, we'd like to know that people have goals, and if they don't, you can work their goals to get them life.
Yeah, for
more.
whatever frame you get them, you want the best of them, right? So if you're in a college town like Madison or Milwaukee or other places where people are here for 4 years, 2 years, whatever, you know they're probably not staying. And if they tell you, I'm an engineering student and I'm headed to Minneapolis after this, that's okay. Don't write them off. Use them for the best 2 to 4 years that you can while they're there. Give them the skills they need so when they're off wherever they go, man, I had this leader who really blah, blah, blah. I had this restaurant, they really blah, blah, blah. That's the story of your culture you want out there. Not, they knew I wasn't staying, so they kind of, flicked me to the side. You don't want that.
And plenty of students decide to stay where they're happy and not necessarily do what they think they want to do for the rest of their life. We have owners, we have managers, we have every degree you could ever imagine in our company, and they're doing what they love. So we've gotten through an interview, we've hired well, now we need to train them. So training is a crazy thing. When I came to Food Fight, I took this position rather, not when I first started with Food Fight. They said, okay, we want you to bring our training online. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we're in the restaurants, we're on the floor. Like, we're not going to do this online. It happens right there. It took me a long time to get my head wrapped around it. I started looking at our training programs and realized that we were training where the salt and pepper shakers are, and the presentation on the Caesar salad. We weren't training about our history. We weren't training about our culture, our mission, our vision. Because when we hired someone, we hired them because we had shifts available. We have holes to fill. So we got to get that body in there. We got to get them on the floor. They need to know where the salt and pepper shakers are, and they need to know what the Caesar salad needs to look like. Everything else was just like not even happening. Training just was, here's how to run the POS, and we'll get back to the salt and pepper shakers, right? So any dud could do that. Didn't matter what their personality was. It didn't matter if they understood that what we want is for people to feel better leaving our restaurant than when they got there. Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm hiring a server and I never tell them that that's what our end goal is, then all they're really going to do are the salt and pepper shaker and the Caesar salad. I can't say, you know what, when we messed up at that table, why didn't you do a legendary correction and make them fans for life? Be like, well, what are you talking about? That wasn't even in our training. So what we realized was that all that, the Caesar salad, the salt and pepper shaker, the POS, that can happen on the floor. So we said, okay, that's fine. Keep all of that training on the floor. And then what we're going to move online is going to be about our history and who we are. We're going to, and we use a component of Hot Schedules. I'm not here to plug for them, but it's called Skooks. It's what we use. So we can hire someone, and then before they hit the floor solo, they need to take a course about their restaurant, and they need to take a course about Food Fight. So they can learn about allergens, so they can learn about when we were founded. They learn about some sanitation. They learn about, I don't know if it's one of our taquerias, they learn about tajin, one of the spices we use, or they learn a bit of history about tequila and mezcal. We could put all these pieces together that were never happening in training. Like, none of that stuff was ever happening. It was all about the salt and pepper shaker and the damn Caesar salad. And there was never anything about culture. And once we created that, we realized that people are staying longer. They're having a lot more success because they know about who they're working for. They know why the company was started. They know how it was started. Some people think Food Fight is like a monster that scoops up restaurants all around Madison. Not the case. Our concepts are our own with only 2 exceptions. And people didn't know that, or they wouldn't know. I'd say, hey, can you name, we have 19 restaurants, 20 in May. Can you name some of the Food Fight restaurants? And people could name like 3 or 4. So if I'm a guest that's coming in saying, oh, I didn't know this was a Food Fight restaurant, I don't want my employee to say, I don't know, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. So when we train them better about who we are and about our mission to say yes, which is whatever you ask for, we're going to find a way to do it if we can, then they're going to have that much more success. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing like groundbreaking that we figured out, but the more they can have success, the longer they'll stay. The more money they'll make while they're there. Mm-hmm. And they'll tell their friends to come too. So if we're willing to invest some time in that hiring piece, we need to be willing to invest more time in the training as well. Mm-hmm. We don't have an infinite number of bodies to train, right? So for us, putting some of it online, and even if it's not using a particular provider, even if it's something that you put up on your Google Drive and you say, okay, here's what we want you to look through this stuff, it's helpful because it's filling in the pieces that don't happen when they're on the floor.
Honey, I'm assuming you do produce a lot of these videos yourself.
Indeed.
But then you also purchase some from...
We don't, and here's why. So there are thousands of videos out there, and they have a really put together person with the put together hair, right?
And the blue dress.
Blue dress, right? And the smile with all white teeth, and it's not who we are, right? Like, we want it to be homegrown because we are. We want it to be authentic. We don't want it to be filmed in a studio somewhere and just feel like it isn't part of who we are. So we use our people. We film quick short shots on the phone. It doesn't need to be super fancy. It needs to be real for us.
Think
for our
about
culture.
those few people in your restaurants that just blow your mind how amazing they are at whatever skill, whatever service, whatever it is. So go to them and say, I want to know how you do that, and I want you to teach it to other people. It gives them leadership competencies, different skills. Show me what you're doing. Like, you do that so well. I want you to sort of train the trainer, if you will. Do that next. Engage them in different ways. Yes, it means they're going to be off the floor for a little while they're doing that. But I personally love when I go into a restaurant and you can see somebody's kind of back there watching and observing, and they're talking, and they're delivering service, and they're teaching each other. That's depending on your restaurant, of course. But I think it's so important when we can use our best players to help other people reach their best versions of themselves. We can't do it all, but can you engage other people to do that? I don't think you have to pay for it either, but I do think you have to be constantly looking at it. We don't want to hire someone, train them for 2 weeks, and then never see them again. When there's a new menu coming out, are we allowing them to try it? If you have when you go into a restaurant and you ask the server, what do you eat here? And they say, oh, I don't. Oh, Or they tell you the most expensive thing on the menu.
Or they say everything's great.
Or everything is great. It's like, no, have your server, and your bartender and all them know a specific dish. Or like, you should try this. Or hey, we're really into localizing this, or whatever it might be, so that they can actually, the whole point when we're training people is that they can give those experiences, the experience of your restaurant, to your customer. So the next time they're going out to spend their hard-earned money, it's not at the neighbor or the competitor or the one that they didn't have to fight for a parking spot for. It's you, intentionally.
And I think another thing that we do is we use our own employees to help create that content. So for training. So if you've got that one knucklehead that won't put their phone away, does everybody have one of those? Like, put your phone away, it's gross. It's nasty, you're not washing your hands. They won't put their phone away. Say, you know what, you love your phone. Can you shoot some videos for me? Can you do a time lapse of set your phone up so we can have a time lapse video of how 2 hours in our super busy bar happens, and then we're going to put that in our training. The 30-page manual is done. Nobody wants I don't want the 30-page manual.
You probably won't have them for long
Nobody's
enough
going to read it. You
it.
can hand it out. It's going to go in the trunk of their car or in their backpack, if they even take it with them. So how do we get that content to people in a way that it's relevant? Short videos. Or even, throw out a question to the entire staff and say, I want to know what are the 5 questions you hear most from our guests. And then say to somebody, does anybody want to put that together in like a PowerPoint or some Prezi or some other thing that young people know about that I don't? Who wants to pull that together? Or our employees have incredible skills, particularly incredible skills when it comes to electronics. And when we have students, we know that they're putting together these things for their classes anyway. Have them help you. Pay them. Well, you should pay them. I think we're not wage and hour law, but I think we have to pay them for when they do that. But they are, your employees can be just as much content creators as you are, because you've got all the other things to take care of at the same time.
And employees like to feel valuable. They don't want to feel like they're just a paycheck. They want to come in and feel appreciated, cared for. If you have a local community college, something you might want to consider is partnering with them to offer different essential skills. Because again, going back to, I'm looking for this type of person, but I can teach them all this technical stuff. What you're really talking about is what used to be called soft skills and now is essential skills. And some people will say we're not teaching that in the K through 12 or at home. It's possible. But part of our job as a leader is to help them with those things so that they can, again, get the confidence to go out there and do a really great job through communication, conflict, all of those good things. So if you can find a community college to partner with, that's maybe where you might try to purchase some training. Typically, right now in the state of Wisconsin, there's fast forward grants where you can actually, the community college in the state will pay for it. You pay just a tiny amount to have that person in there. It's worked really well in the Madison area. Food Fight has put through we have a program like that right now. It's a 11-week session. They come every week for 4 hours. They are paid during that time unless they're salary, and then I just tell them it's bonus for them. They come and they love it. They eat it up because they know their employer cares in them. We set the stage that you're not here because you're missing something. You're here because we see something in you. And whatever that next level is that you want to get at, we're here to help you through education. So some of it should be homegrown, and sometimes you have to look outside of the box and think about how can we do things slightly differently. But then don't go tell Ann she's going to class because she's not very good, because she's not going to be vested. You know, find those high performers, high potential employees, and say, I'm investing in you because I care about you. It's amazing the clout that it brings for these people. They feel my employer believes in me more than just when I'm there on Friday nights serving fish or whatever it might be. All right, lastly, we're going to talk about employee engagement, which is really just treating them well. So we hire well, we treat them well, we train them well, then we get out of their way so they can go do their thing and be amazing. But then we need to engage with them. Because if you just let them go, they feel forgotten about. So there are ways that you can engage with people, and Food Fight does a great job, so Elizabeth will talk about those, so that you don't just go, well, I wonder how Amy's doing. You should know, we should know how our people are doing and feeling.
So I'll tell you about a few of the things that we do. One thing we do, like Lynea said, we offer people the opportunity to go to courses at Madison College and show them that we believe in where they're going in their path, whether that may be in the next 5 years, 2 years, or longer. We also ask for their input. So we have employee surveys. In some restaurants, they do them biannually. Some restaurants, it's once a year. But we're asking questions about, are you getting the schedule that you love? Are there things that you need to do your job that you don't have? We ask, they aren't super long, and they're confidential but not anonymous. Because anonymous tends to make people just throw out all the junk that they want to get off their chests. Confidential means that if something were to come up that's concerning about safety, we can have someone reach out to them. But you can do it pretty easily through SurveyMonkey, free, simple, get their feedback, you know, and then be willing to do something about it. So when we heard at the Cooper's Tavern that they were really short on those little forks for the mussels, what are those called? The little mussels forks? Seafood forks, thanks, okay. They're short on those, and so we're constantly running to the dish room to see if any were ready. Really? Like, just order some. That's super easy. But sometimes we don't notice those things. So if you survey the employees to get their feedback about what's going well, what do they need, what ideas do they have, maybe their manager isn't ever saying, hey, do you have any ideas of how this could be better? Or not taking the time to say, you know, what would you do if you had to rework this system that we have? They can put those in there, but choose something from some of those surveys that you're going to fix. Get the forks. You know, they need another blender at one of the places that serves milkshakes. Get it. Or at least explain to them why we're doing it the way we are doing it. So we get their feedback that way, checking on the pulse. We also have some key teams. So we have a social media team so that each restaurant has one rep that helps write the social media posts. We are fortunate enough in our office to have a art and design team that takes care of social media, but each restaurant has one person that can write the content to take a little bit off of their plates and feel involved in the restaurant. Now, we don't let them like post away, but they shoot the drafts to the art and design team, or they shoot their photos that they take. You know, maybe they're working service and they see this amazing cocktail that's getting ready to go out. They can snap a picture and send it to the art and design team and say, hey, let's, you know, this is what we're serving up tonight at Tex Tubbs Taco Palace or whatever. We also have a hospitality team, and I run that team. That's one rep from each restaurant. We get together once a month for 2 hours. We read books, we go to seminars, we have guest speakers, and we talk about all things hospitality. Like what's happening in your restaurants that makes people feel like this is where I want to come to eat, or what's happening in your restaurants that you feel like we're struggling and we need to know how we can better serve these guests or this particular population. We have amazing discussions, and it really fires things up. They're paid for their time that they come to those meetings, and then they're also expected to, you know, talk about something at a staff meeting. I consider them part of the leadership team, so if each restaurant has a GM and an AGM and a bar manager, I would put the hospitality rep right up in there. Many of our hospitality reps, in fact, all of them, I think, have gone through the course at Madison College. Some of them are now assistant general managers, some of them are general managers. So it's kind of we don't have a laid out plan that says you do this and you're this position, then you do this and you'll be an AGM and you do this. We don't have that. We've worked on it for years, but we don't have anything set in stone, really. We kind of flow a little bit more, but we do want to promote from within. And if getting on the hospitality team is a way to say, oh, you know what, I know that this is going to lead to a position, they'll start to see that their future in 5 years is going to look different than they maybe thought it was going to look. Those are some things we do.
What do they get paid for? What do they get paid for?
They get $13 an hour. Our minimum wage is $13 an hour in Food Fight. Our average wage is just under $15 for hourly employees. Tipped employees would be like, what? I'm not working for that, but yes, dishwashers start at 13. So, yeah, thanks for asking. That's a good question. But if I'm going to say, hey, come on the second Monday night of each month, I'm going to pay you something. And then we also say, okay, we have a holiday party each year. It's all of our managers. And we say, okay, you know what, the social media team and the hospitality team are also invited. And they get to come and they're hanging out with the managers and the owners and the investors, the board of directors. And it's something that their peers don't necessarily have that opportunity. It's no big deal for us to have another person that we give drink tickets to. And they get to feel part of something bigger. And that, treating them well, feeling like they're a part of a bigger picture, they're far more invested in what we do.
And with those high potential employees, I will never forget when I came here 2 years ago. I was judging one of the contests, not the food contest, but the students that do the restaurant concepts. And there was a young lady walking around. She was a little bit lost, so I can't help it. The mom or the teacher in me was like, can I help you find somewhere? Like I have any idea where anything is. And she's like, well, actually, I'm looking for my boss. Long story short, he brought her. He considered her to be the next assistant manager that he would have. And so I ended up talking to him and her once we found him, and he brought her here with and was letting her kind of like run the show. Because he said, someone had said to him, you go to all these cool things. You go to all these association meetings, dinners, networking events, whatever it might be. So he decided, well, I can't bring the whole restaurant, but I'm going to bring somebody with and kind of give her some networking opportunities. She thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I thought, why don't we do that? Why don't we bring students and young people to, like when we go to these golf events or networking events or whatever it is that you do, you know, bring somebody with you and say, hey, I want to introduce you to some people, make people feel valued, engage them, ask them what makes them feel valued, what do they want to do, how do they want to be engaged? You know, most people don't want a turkey at Christmas anymore.
No.
But what do they want to be recognized for their efforts? You know, maybe it's a couple hours off. I don't know. Whatever it is, I can't speak for them. We have to ask questions and find out so that we can engage them in a way that's meaningful to them. There has never once been a person that's come from Food Fight restaurant groups, student cohort, which I think you're up to like 85 or 100, somewhere between 85 and 100 employees have come through, that has sat in that classroom and not been engaged because they set them up for success. They say, here's why you're coming, here's what you're going to learn, here's what potentially you're going to do with it. And at the end of that thing, Kevin Henry, who's the CEO, who I don't find intimidating, I think he's a sweet, kind man, but I'm sure if I'm a new server and my CEO comes walking into the classroom to see my final presentation, I might freak a little bit. But they're so excited because they understand why he's there. Because he cares about them as a person. He stays the whole time. Other people, they come and they go just to watch their people, but their CEO really wants to breathe engagement, and he's present. And so much of what engagement is being present with that person in that moment, even though we have 100,000 other things to do. When people know why they're being asked to do stuff that's not fun, because we're not going to stand up here and tell you to go home and do a bunch of floofy programs to engage your people, but do they know why the work they do matters? It becomes different. There's a Mexican restaurant in Fitchburg. My family and I were there. I have 3 little kids. My neighbors brought with their 2 little kids, and we got put in the back room, which right away you're like, oh man, they think we're those people. So we're at this big table in the back, and next to us is 2 servers rolling napkins, rolling silverware. Why is rolling silverware important? All of you know. Why is it important? Why does it matter?
Seems like a trick question. Is it a trick
It wasn't
question?
meant to be a trick question, no. It was because we have to be able to set the next table so we can have the next service, so the next
Oh,
person
right.
can eat, blah, 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 right? You can't just be rolling the silverware while they're sitting down. That's weird. So, but these two young ladies did not know why, because they were loudly complaining about why they served rolling silverware was beneath them, and that they were upset that they didn't get to leave their shift. And it was everything in me to not go up to them and say, here's why you roll silverware, you know? And my husband's like, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm like, but I want to just go tell them, like, stop complaining. But the culture of, and their food's great. The food is great there. The service is okay. But I'm not looking to go there again, other than to see if those two ladies have figured it out. Our culture matters. The engagement level of why they do every piece of work they do matters. You know, when the chef does more than just cook, when the frontline person gets to do more than just what their job is, all that stuff is important because it shows them how everything works. But do they understand why? And then do we give them feedback? And I think that's really important, and it's something that I've physically myself seen missing. So we can focus on that. We have just like 0 minutes left.
Oh, dang it.
So,
But there was some good stuff.
I know. The last thing, we'll just leave you with this real quick, if you could talk about your tomato award.
In 0
Because we
minutes?
also, in 0 minutes, we have 1 minute. We cannot tell people, we cannot not say thank you because we give them a paycheck. You have got to be looking for those opportunities to tell people, that was awesome. Thanks for not losing your cool. Thanks for picking up that shift. Thanks for rolling the silverware. Not because we're giving them trophy awards, but because we want them to know the work they do matters.
Right, and with Betsy, right, we asked Betsy to please make it through the shift with us. We need to thank her at the end of the shift. We need to say, Betsy, you did it. Now let's go sit down. I'll grab you a glass of water. What we do at Food Fight, we have something called the Tomato Award, and this should be organic for each place. Our Tomato Award is this. I'm going to do my fastest tomato story. So when we had 12 restaurants, Monte Sciro he was having a friend over for brunch, and he went to a local shop to get bagels and lox, and then he realized, shoot, I don't have any tomatoes, and so he asked the cashier if he could also please buy a tomato, and she said no. And he was like, okay, can I talk to the manager? And so the manager came over and he said, I'm sorry, I got my bagels and lox, I just need a tomato too. And he said, I'm sorry, no. Crazy, he left, went to the grocery store, bought a tomato, had his friend over for brunch. But he couldn't get it out of his head. And he thought, well, I wonder what our restaurants would do if someone came in and asked if they could please have a tomato. So he called a friend and he said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to call each of the 12 restaurants. I want you to place an order to go. When you go to pick up that order to go, I want you to say you forgot you also need a tomato. And then I want you to report back to me what happens. So she did that. She did that for each and every restaurant. And then for the first time in the company's history at that point, Monty said, I'm calling a meeting of all the general managers and operations managers. And he pulled them all into one big room and told this exact same story. And they're all like shaken. Like, oh God, who was working when she came to the restaurant? Like, did they give her a tomato? Did they give her a tomato? And he brings out this big grocery sack, and he holds it here, and he says, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go around this room, and I'm going to put a tomato in front of you. If your restaurant, someone at your restaurant gave her a tomato, sold her a tomato, whatever happened. And he started walking around the room, and when he finished walking around the room, he put a tomato in front of every single manager. Every single person gave her a tomato. One guy sold it. We figured he would sell it, but everyone else gave her a tomato. And in that moment, we decided, he ditched our entire mission statement that was like a bunch of fluffy paragraphs about what we're supposed to be doing, and he said, it's say yes. Give them the tomato, say yes. So now we have a tomato award. So when people do something that's above and beyond, we give them a $50 gift card. It's got a big tomato on it. It says, I said yes. It's real corny. But what we want is for them, when they then go to spend their gift card, someone knows, oh, they must have done something special because this gift card has a big, stupid tomato on it, right? And then at the end of the year, the executive team gathers all those stories and we vote on them. And the winners get $250 cash and a hand-blown glass tomato from a local artist. And $250 is not life-changing money. It may be sometimes for some people, depending on the week, right? And a glass tomato is a glass tomato. but it's the recognition. It's saying, you are so important with what you did. We want to recognize you in front of everyone. Everyone in this company, we want to say, you are that special. And it can be something crazy. I mean, it was, one time it was someone asked for a toothpick at a restaurant where we don't have toothpicks, and then the server came over with a napkin and had like 8 different sharp objects with which to get something out of their teeth. There was like the little sword from the cocktails, and I don't even know what all was on there. But like, we don't have a toothpick, but here are some other options. It was really just a lot easier to say no. We don't have a toothpick. So we say, here's a tomato award. My other last story, and then I'll let you go, is Marlene at the Hubbard Avenue Diner, who saw, on a super rainy, cold April day, saw a woman in a wheelchair passing in front of the restaurant. And so she ran outside to get the door, and the woman said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not coming here. I'm just trying to get home. This is where I get a little. But my hands are too cold, and I can't wheel my chair. And so Marlene, the host, said, oh, well, where do you live? And she said, oh, just on Elmwood Avenue, which is 1 block over. She said, I'll take you. So she leaves the restaurant in the rain in her little short sleeve shirt and pushes her to Elmwood Avenue. And the woman says, it's just a few blocks down. 8 blocks later, Marlene now also can't feel her arms, and she's terrified that she's lost her job because she didn't tell anybody. And we said, you didn't lose your job. We're giving you a tomato award. We're giving you money. We're giving you recognition, because that's the amazing thing that you can do for people. Take a moment, whether it's a toothpick or whether it's pushing them in the rain for a mile. Do the right thing for people. And if Marlene knows, and she does, that that's what we value, that's our culture, that's what we believe in, that's what we celebrate, she stays. That's it. That's the culture. So build your culture. It's going to be amazing if it isn't already, right? It's easy. It's the little things.
Thank you for your time today. We hope you have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your stay.